Hello, this lesson covers the ETSI Specialist and Testing Task Forces, their objectives, the different types of financing, how to create an STF or TTF in a reference body, the funding allocation process and its yearly timeline, and finally, how to apply and what the organization of an STF or TTF is. First, what do the acronyms STF and TTF mean? The acronym STF stands for Specialist Task Force. STFs are teams of experts established to accelerate the production of standards when required within the ETSI technical groups. TTF means Testing Task Force. TTFs are teams that support the ETSI technical groups to accelerate the development of specifically needed standards related to testing and methodology. So why do we do this? Well, sometimes the development of a standard requires specific technical competencies which are not available in the reference bodies. That is to say, the technical committees, the ETSI projects, the ETSI partnership projects, the special committees or industry specification groups. And/or the timescale cannot be achieved with the regular voluntary contributions of the delegates. Both STFs and TTFs can be proposed by ETSI members through reference bodies. STFs and TTFs give ETSI a competitive advantage by providing technical competencies to rapidly develop standards needed by the market and/or to implement European Union policy. That's why ETSI created STFs and TTFs, to address this need. Specialist task forces, or STFs, play a key role in accelerating standards development, particularly in strategic areas. They're typically used when highly specialized expertise is needed, or when timeliness is tight. STFs can be proposed by ETSI members through technical groups, or requested and funded by organizations such as the European Commission or EFTA. Experts are selected through an open call for expertise, which is published to all ETSI members. Applications may come from members or from external organizations, provided they have ETSI member support. Once selected, experts sign an agreement with ETSI, and their remuneration is linked to the timely delivery of high-quality milestones. Finally, all outputs produced by an STF follow the standards approval process of the relevant technical group. Testing task forces, or TTFs, support ETSI's technical bodies and industry specification groups. They are used to accelerate the development of testing and methodology standards, particularly where speed and precision are essential. TTFs provide immediate access to high-level technical expertise, helping ETSI respond quickly to market needs and strengthen its competitive edge. They are established and managed by the ETSI Secretariat under the authority of the Director General. Their work is guided by a technical roadmap and a multi-annual plan developed by the Centre for Testing and Interoperability, CTI, in consultation with the ETSI board and the Operational Coordination Group, which is the group of chairs within each of the technical groups. Experts are selected through an open call for expertise, and any legally registered organization may apply. Once selected, experts work under ETSI's framework, contributing to clearly defined objectives and deliverables. And as with all ETSI activities, the outputs of an STF follow the approval process of the relevant technical group. Let's look at what the different funding sources are. There are three. First, you have the funded work program within the ETSI budget. Second, there's funding from the European Commission and EFTA, the European Free Trade Association. And the third option is that voluntary contributions can be provided by ETSI members. So, how do you create an STF or TTF within a reference body using the funded work programme? Well, it begins when a need is identified within a reference body. At that point, a request is developed together with a set of terms of reference, or TOR. These terms of reference provide a detailed description of the work to be carried out, including a clear estimate of the maximum budget required. The proposed work must also align with ETSI's strategic areas, such as maintaining standards in mature domains, driving innovation, addressing emerging technologies, supporting horizontal activities like quality and security, and contributing to societal and environmental goals. To support this step, templates for both STF and TTF terms of reference are available on the ETSI portal. Once prepared, the terms of reference must be approved by the reference body and supported by at least 4 ETSI members within that body. They are then submitted for acceptance to the OCG and the board, typically in September, with the overall STF and TTF budget approved by the General Assembly in the autumn. Throughout this process, the ETSI Secretariat, and in particular the Funded Activities team, provides support from the initial drafting of the terms of reference through to approval and into project planning and control. And it's worth noting that this is the same process that applies when funding is provided through voluntary contributions from ETSI members. Now, turning to requests for funding from the European Commission and EFTA. The European Commission regularly publishes invitations to submit proposals. In response, interested reference bodies prepare and submit technical proposals, which must first be accepted by the ETSI board before being forwarded to the Commission for approval. These proposals need to be clearly aligned with key frameworks, including the annual work programme priorities, relevant EU priorities, legislation and policies, and the objectives of the Single Market Programme. As with the funded work programme, the entire process is supported by the ETSI Secretariat, helping reference bodies develop, refine, and submit their proposals. The funding process follows a clear annual timeline. Let's walk through it step by step. It begins with the reference bodies, preparing the terms of reference. Typically, this takes place up to July or August. Once ready, the terms of reference are submitted to the ETSI Secretariat ahead of review by the OCG and the board during that same July to August period. Then, in September, the board decides which proposals can be funded within the limits of the overall annual budget. At this stage, reference bodies need to be ready to present and defend their proposals during the OCG and board discussions. If a proposal is not approved, feedback is provided, allowing the reference body either to revise and resubmit or to step back from the project. If the proposal is approved, there is one final step. The General Assembly in November or December formally approves the budget for STFs and the funded work programme. And once that final approval is in place, the project can begin, typically at the start of the following year. So, who can apply, how and when for the funded work programme STFs and TTFs? Let's start with eligibility. For STFs, I remind you that applications are open to ETSI member organisations or to non-members provided they have the support of an ETSI member. For TTFs, any legally registered organisation may apply. If someone is interested, the process begins with a call for expertise. Published on the ETSI portal, this is freely viewable. This happens after the board approval, typically in September. Next, the ETSI Secretariat, together with the reference body chair, reviews all the applications and establishes a shortlist of candidates. During this phase, the STF or TTF leader is appointed by the ETSI Director General in consultation with the relevant reference body chair. This process continues through to the General Assembly budget approval in November or December. If your organization is selected, the next step is a preparatory meeting. At this stage, the ETSI Secretariat invites all the selected experts together with the reference body chair. During this meeting, the draft work plan and resource allocation are defined. It is also an opportunity to cover contractual arrangements and to explain the full support provided by the ETSI Secretariat throughout the lifetime of the STF or TTF. In both cases, voluntary contributions from ETSI members may also be included. Finally, the project formally starts either at the beginning of the year or on the agreed start date of the task force. Now let's look at how this works for EC and EFTA funding. The process remains broadly the same. A call for expertise is opened on the ETSI portal after the approval from the European Commission. Next, a shortlist meeting is organized involving the ETSI Secretariat and the reference body chair, and this is to select the most suitable candidates. This phase continues until the grant agreements between ETSI and the EC or EFTA are signed. A preparatory meeting is then held with the selected experts, the ETSI Secretariat, and the reference body chair. At this stage, the work plan is confirmed. This is the draft work plan, along with resource allocation and key operational details. The project then starts, depending on the agreed STF start date. And as with the funded work program, voluntary contributions from ETSI members may also be included. In a few words, let's look at how an STF or TTF is organized. First, who does the work? Well, the reference body provides the technical guidance for the STF or TTF. The ETSI Secretariat is responsible for managing the recruitment of experts and for setting up the project structure. In terms of organization, the STF or TTF leader is appointed by the ETSI Director General in consultation with the relevant reference body chair. And that leader then acts as the main interface between three key actors: the funded activities team for the overall management of the TTF or the STF, the service providers for day-to-day coordination of the work, and the reference body chair for technical oversight and control. Now, regarding reporting, progress reports are prepared during the project and are reviewed and endorsed by the relevant reference body before being approved by the chair. These reports confirm the achievement of intermediate milestones, which are also used as a basis for expert payments. Finally, at the end of the STF or TTF, the reference body chair ensures that feedback on the overall work is provided to the ETSI Director General. And to conclude, let's summarize the key takeaways on specialist task forces and testing task forces. Well, they accelerate standards development in strategic areas. They are used when specialized expertise is needed or when deadlines are tight. They may be proposed by ETSI members through committees or requested and funded by the European Commission or EFTA. Experts are selected through an open call for expertise. And applications can come from any legally registered organizations, provided that in the case of STF applications, they are ETSI member supported. And all outputs follow the approval process of the relevant technical group. If you would like more information, there are several useful resources available. You can see them here on the slide. On the ETSI website, you can find guidance on how to join a task force. On the ETSI portal, you will find detailed information about the funding activities team, as well as the templates that I mentioned, and direct access to the Call for Expertise application system. Thank you very much.